Part 20. Rebirth of Fantasy, Obtain the Sect System. Author, Red General. Chapter 191. A huge spirit-detecting stone stood here, emitting light. The light was extremely dazzling, waking up the sleeping man next to him. Looking at the person in front of him with blurry eyes, the young man stretched first, then touched his sleepy eyes, and then said lazily, "It's for a qualification test, right?" "That's right." Shui Yuling nodded and made a clear voice. This voice made the originally sleepy man's heart skip a beat. He quickly touched his eyes and looked at the person in front of him with wide eyes. His expression couldn't help but be stunned, and he was at a loss for a moment. What a beautiful woman. The man's throat twitched and he swallowed. But Shui Yuling seemed to be used to this kind of scene. Her expression didn't change at all. She just stood there quietly, her hair hanging around her waist gently fluttering in the wind. The man also realized that what he was doing was a little inappropriate. He quickly came to his senses, touched his head, and smiled at Shui Yuling. "I'm sorry to frighten you. You want to test your qualifications, right? Then come on." Shui Yuling nodded and followed the man to the spirit testing stone. "Just put your hand up," the man reminded kindly from the side. Shui Yuling nodded, and then placed Yu's white and slender jade hands on the spirit testing stone. I saw that the next moment, a dazzling light appeared from the boulder. "This." The man on the side showed a hint of surprise and said dumbfounded, Saint grade qualification. She is actually Saint grade qualified." The monstrous light also made the 8 martial emperor strongmen above the hall open their eyes, frowned slightly, and looked up here. Unexpectedly, a few years later, I met someone with Saint grade qualifications. However, judging from the girl's dress and appearance, she seemed to be from a family, but why did she come here? A strong martial emperor murmured, his expression showing a trace of contemplation. Before this martial emperor could say anything more, the other powerful martial emperors around him disappeared instantly when they saw this. Seeing this scene, the strong martial emperor was stunned for a moment. He looked into the distance and saw a scene that surprised him. I saw 7 strong martial emperors surrounding Shui Yuling, and they kept saying something to Shui Yuling. The aura on his body flickers in and out, like a sign before a volcano erupts. "Girl, I wonder if you would like to take this emperor as your teacher." Suzy ignored the noisy words of others, holding a fly whisk in his hand and looking at Shui Yuling with a smile. The snow-white robe gives Kyoshi a mysterious aura, making him look like an old man who has become an immortal. In addition, he originally had a kind-hearted face, which makes people want to have a good impression at the first sight. Before Shui Yuling could say anything, Kwang Gyun holding a long sword suddenly appeared in front of her and said, "Girl, with your talent, why don't you practice swordsmanship with me? I'd like to worship them as a teacher, that's of no use at all. As long as you worship this emperor as your teacher, I can help you reach a state beyond your imagination within 1 year." This sentence stunned Shui Yuling and she didn't know how to answer. Before Shui Yuling could think about it further, several more voices came to her ears. "Girl, I would like to take this place as my teacher. Young girl, please be willing to worship me as your teacher." The other martial emperors also kept up with the words and kept mumbling. It looked like they were ready to snatch it. This scene naturally attracted the attention of other martial saint powerhouses, who looked greatly surprised. They had never seen the 8 peak masters looking so eager for talents. Seeing this scene, Shui Yuling opened her mouth slightly, revealing her extremely white teeth. I couldn't help but feel a little helpless in my heart. She didn't expect that these people would be so enthusiastic, which made her feel a little overwhelmed. Not far away, when the old man who accompanied Shui Yuling saw this scene, his heart was shocked and he couldn't help but be stunned. 7 powerful martial emperors actually appeared here at the same time. This scene is really shocking. I didn't expect that Mrs. Saint grade qualifications would attract them so much. But immediately, the old man began to get excited, and the excitement rushed into his mind. No matter which senior the young lady takes as her teacher, she will definitely make money without losing anything. In this way, my snow tribe may be saved, the old man thought to himself. Say it. Thoughts kept flashing through Shui Yuling's heart, but she cut them off one after another. There is a hint of hesitation in the eyebrows. She doesn't know who is the best to be her disciple. To be honest, she wants to refuse, but she doesn't know how to refuse. After all, the people standing next to her now are all powerful martial emperors. Each one of them is a figure who can establish a huge power. Each one of them is a character who can represent the life and death of thousands of creatures. They are all people who stand at the pinnacle of martial Dao's realm. No matter who you worship, you are offending several others. Well, having said this, Shui Yuling couldn't help but sigh secretly and slowly exhaled. If other people saw her like this, they would definitely call her an idiot. 7 martial emperors are now begging you to be their master, but you are still hesitating. I really don't know what you are thinking. Kyoshi just happened to notice this situation. My heart sank, and I understood what Shui Yuling was thinking. Then he looked at the other 6 people with a smile on his face, and said, "Everyone, calm down, don't be anxious because of this. Your situation has made this girl a little confused, and she is panicking for a while. How can she choose?" When Kuang-yun heard this, he spread his hands helplessly and said, "What should we do? This is the only disciple of Saint Grade. I will not withdraw from the competition just because of your words." "That's right," others agreed one by one, nodding with firm eyes. Seeing this, Kyoshi covered his face helplessly. "I didn't say that you would withdraw from the fight. Just see for yourself what the girl looks like now." When everyone heard this, they quickly looked around. I saw Shui Yuling lowering her head, her slender hands constantly twirling her robe, her expression constantly changing, as if she was making a choice. Shui Yuling looks a little pitiful and cute. The man beside him felt a sense of protectiveness in his heart. But because of his strength, the man did not have the courage to stand up. Seeing this, everyone looked at each other, feeling embarrassed. Kuang-yun coughed a few times, then looked at Su Zi and said, "I wonder what Peak Master Su means." Others looked over when they heard this. Seeing everyone looking at him, Kyoshi stroked his hair and beard calmly, feeling relaxed and content. Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 192. The girl is very hesitant now. After all, it is difficult for her to agree to the 7 martial emperors among us. I also know what she is thinking. She is afraid that if she chooses one of us as her teacher, she will be affected by it. Offend the other 6 people. Everyone looked at each other and said nothing. It seemed that this was indeed the case. So, how about this? What are the attributes of the skills? Let's see who is the most suitable to teach the girl. What do you think? Kyoshi looked at the others with a questioning expression. After hearing this, the other 6 people looked at each other, said nothing, and nodded. Seeing this, Suzu smiled slightly, then looked at Shui Yuling who was hesitating and said, "Envoise, I wonder what kind of technique you are practicing." Hearing this, Shui Yuling immediately bowed and replied, "Senior, the technique I practice is the Xianbing-ju of our Snow clan." Shui Yuling saw what had happened just now, and she respected and favored Kyoshi more and more. She actually really wanted to take Kyoshi as her teacher. Xianbing-ju. Hearing this technique, Suzu raised his eyebrows slightly and couldn't help but sigh. "Oh, what a pity, the skills don't match my skills. I really missed a good talent." Then he took a step back, looked at the others and said, "This woman's skills don't match me. You go and fight for her. I don't have that fate." As soon as the words fell, Kyoshi's figure disappeared from the place. Only the other 6 people were left, looking at each other. Seeing this scene, they looked at each other and smiled helplessly. It's as if they matched Shui Yuling's skills. They don't have the fate to accept it either. The techniques don't match either. Although Saint Grade has good qualifications, the skills he practices must match them. Otherwise, even if he accepts a disciple, he will not know where to start teaching. As for the conversion technique, this won't work. Because if you forcefully convert the skills to practice, it will only waste the talent of the converter, and the previous practice will be wasted, so there is no need at all. Unless you are practicing a lower grade ice attribute technique, this is allowed to be converted, but it can only be an ice attribute technique. It's equivalent to once you choose this method, you can't make any changes, and you can't choose other methods. Of course, if you can practice 2 kinds of skills, you can exchange them with each other, but it can only be 2 attribute skills. Say it. I saw Kyoshi's figure appearing above the main hall, looking at the scene with a pair of cloudy eyes. Then he looked at the martial emperor next to him with some envy. Master Chiu Peak, I have to congratulate you first. The strong martial emperor raised his brows slightly and looked at the virtual words in confusion, not understanding what they meant. As for Saint Grade, until now, except for Shui Yuling, there has not been one. Ha ha ha. Oh. Martial Emperor's eyes lit up. He didn't expect that there would be someone who matched his law manifestation. However, the person present who felt the most pity was not the several martial emperors, but the man staying under the peach tree. When Tai Shui saw this scene, he felt unwilling and gritted his teeth. You have to do the right thing. This will not only make you lose face, but it will also make other people unhappy. How to say? Profound Heaven Sect has begun to recruit disciples. It seems that it is still preparing to develop its own power. This is not good news for our heavenly palace, a man in black said with a solemn expression when he saw this scene. After all, this is a normal thing. Unless one owns a family, Saint Grade qualifications will usually be taken over by behemoths like Tiangong. How can other forces have a chance to take over? Why is this damn guy so lucky? We were the ones who came first, but because the skills didn't match, we were snatched away by him. It's really unfair. Chiu Zhou laughed, leaned over and helped her up, and disappeared in the envious eyes of other martial emperors. Ha ha ha. Unable to help but laugh, he cupped his hands towards Suzy and said, "Thank you very much for the congratulations from Master Su, I'll go too." As soon as he finished speaking, his figure appeared next to Shui Yuling. But then she felt a cold breath surrounding her whole body. This breath made her feel cold, she shivered, and her face looked a little ugly. This is the feeling of admiring someone. Because your talent is not as good as hers, you will have an inferiority complex. There are many middle grade and high grade people, and of course, there will also be a few supreme grade talented people among them from time to time. The strong martial emperor smiled and waved his hand, and the cold aura disappeared instantly. Not far away, there is a mid-air shrouded in white clouds. Kyoshi smiled slightly and said, "This little girl, I have checked it out. She is practicing the ice attribute technique Xianbingju. If nothing else happens, she may even have a physical constitution." The other strong martial emperors didn't say anything when they heard this. They were helpless, but they couldn't just go up and grab it because they were unwilling. Afterwards, the man didn't have any regrets because there were a lot of young women coming in this direction. The scene changes. However, such talented people were naturally taken away by the group of martial saint elders. The semi-saint experts and the martial venerable experts could only watch with blank eyes. Oh, what a beautiful woman! It's a pity that she was accepted as a disciple by Master Kaiozwo. I don't know when we can meet again in the future. Even if we can meet, with my talent, can you have sex with me? After a few breaths, I saw a dazzling light constantly emitting from the spirit detector. Chiuzhou had his hands behind his back, and his expression showed a hint of inscrutability. Such a situation makes people dare not look directly into his eyes. Envoise, I am Chiuzhou, one of the 8 peak masters of the Profound Heaven section. I heard that the sword you practice is of ice type. I heard from Suza that it matches me exactly, so, are you willing to worship me as your teacher? Hearing this, Shui Yuling was stunned for a moment, and then became happy. She quickly knelt down on the ground with a respectful expression and called Master. It would be even worse if the sect master heard this and scolded himself. The man looked into the distance with his dark eyes, sighing secretly. Seeing the figure that suddenly appeared in front of her, Shui Yuling was shocked and took a step back because of her instinctive reaction. So the ice-type skills she practices are not suitable for us, but, only you, Kaiyufeng Master. You are the one who practices ice-type skills. So I have gained a talented person, isn't this congratulations? The 2 Daoist figures stood here facing each other, with indifferent faces looking towards the Profound Heaven sect, which was recruiting disciples in the distance. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of Fantasy, Obtain the Sect System. Author, Red General. Chapter 193. When the man next to him heard this, his expression did not change. He closed his eyes and shook his head. So what? Can we stop Profound Heaven sect from recruiting disciples? What's more, the Palace Master didn't ask us to provoke the Profound Heaven sect, he just asked us to keep an eye on it. It's already good to cause some trouble for them on the way, so don't think about anything else, we can just keep an eye on it. Seeing this, the man in black smiled helplessly. There are so many thoughts in my heart. During all these years in the Heavenly Palace, when had they ever experienced such birdiness? But, I was so angry when I met this Profound Heaven sect. Say it. All I saw was the square with the war flag flying. There was a lot of noise, and among the people coming and going, a man in commoner clothes with an average appearance looked around, his expression revealing a trace of contemplation. Is this the Profound Heaven sect that can compete with the Heavenly Palace? The strength is pretty good. It's just a square, and the surroundings are filled with the auras of the martial saint and the half-emperor, especially the hall not far away. It actually made me feel a little bit of danger. The man looked at the magnificent hall not far away. A trace of curiosity flashed in his eyes. In the sky above the main hall, 8 powerful martial emperors stood leaning over. A pair of eyes, quietly observing the surroundings. I wonder if I can join this sect with my mortal talent? Alas! There was another hint of sadness in the man's heart. The man's name is Fang Gu, and he was born into the Fang clan of the top 10 aristocratic families in the central region. Originally, he could have enjoyed his own glory, wealth, and family happiness, but, because of the disputes among the 10 major families, he got into trouble. Some inevitable troubles aroused the attention of some huge forces. Therefore, the family to which Fang Gu belonged suffered an unreasonable disaster. In just one day, everyone in the Fang family died, and only Fang Gu was left alive in the world. For an ordinary person, this blow is really too big. Even so, Fang Gu also got a blessing in disguise. He walked drunkenly to a cave, where he obtained the legendary dream stone that can restore memory. Fang Gu also awakened the memory of his previous life and remembered all the things in his previous life. Fang Gu's predecessor was the emperor of the Zijin dynasty, one of the 8 immortal dynasties of the immortal domain, and his own cultivation level reached Saint Realm. In an era when no strong person can emerge from the Emperor Realm, Saint Realm is invincible. With his powerful skills and strength, Fang Gu was not defeated at all in a battle that belonged to the strong men of Saint Realm. In the end, he was defeated by 1 against 5, which resounded throughout the Central Realm and shocked the world. Then he killed the 5 Saint Realm experts one by one, thus dominating the entire Xianzhou. He deserves to be called a hero in troubled times. But, what a pity. Because he killed 5 Saint Realm powerhouses, Fang Gu's reputation spread all over the world and spread throughout the immortal domain, attracting the attention of some eternal forces. After that, within a few days, a large number of Saint Realm powerhouses began to come to the Zhejian dynasty and began to visit Fang Gu, promising him various benefits and joining their forces. But who is Fang Gu? He is the emperor of the Zhou dynasty and the great emperor of a dynasty. How could he stoop to the feet of others because of this? Is it because they are an eternal force? Snort. Ignoring the people's attempts to please them, I refused them in one breath, but that wasn't the end of it, and then even scolded them. When this group of people heard the scolding, they were a little angry but did not dare to offend. After several years, finally, several major eternal forces are ready to unite to beat the arrogant and domineering weapon flames of the Zhejian dynasty. 10 strong men at the pinnacle of Saint Realm were sent to the Zhejian dynasty. A war is inevitable. The final result of the Zhejian dynasty was that they lost. He also won. Although Fang Gu was strong, he was not strong enough to fight 1 against 10 with his own strength. In the end, Fang Gu paid the price of his life and furiously killed 3 Saint Realm strong men and drove away the remaining 7 Saint Realm strong men. He won, but because he had no life blessing, Fang Gu finally died under the quiet spring, and his soul was scattered between heaven and earth. However, Fang Gu couldn't help spitting out a mouthful of blood and fell into the lower realm because of his previous carelessness and not paying attention to the consequences during practice. As a result, Fang Gu went through thousands of years of reincarnation and was reborn from the 9 netherworld of Yama. I hope this sect can accept me so that I can start my own step-by-step revenge plan. Otherwise, it may take 100 years to advance to Saint Realm with my own strength. This is too long for me. After saying this, Fang Gu sighed secretly, and a hint of apology appeared in his eyebrows. In the bottom of my heart emerged a peerless fairy who possessed the power to conquer a country and a city, and was graceful and luxurious. A purple and gold phoenix robe is added to the body, wrapping the proud body of the peerless fairy. Her long hair floats behind her and makes people unable to stop her movements. Her bright eyes are full of charm, making people fall into it at the first sight. Her name is Feng Xiaoxiao, she is his empress and the love of Fang Gu's life. If Fang Gu had not offended that force because of his pride and domineering, maybe he would still be wandering around the world with his empress. Thinking of this, Fang Gu couldn't help but show a trace of regret. In this life, he decided to keep a low profile. He must let go of his previous pride and disdain and learn to be patient. Phew. Fang Gu exhaled and looked at the scene in front of him. Unknowingly, he had arrived under the peach blossom tree and next to the spiritual stone. There were 3 men in front of him who were measuring their qualifications. I saw a few big characters appearing on the spiritual stone. Zhangbai. Middle grade qualification. The man standing next to the spirit testing stone saw this scene, nodded slightly to him, and said softly, "Congratulations, you have met the conditions for joining the sect." When the man named Zhangbai heard this, he was very happy. He quickly bowed his hands to this man and ran to the main hall with joy. Immediately afterwards, the next person begins to test his qualifications. Yi Feng. High grade qualification. Several big characters appeared on the spirit detecting stone again. When Yi Feng, who was wearing white clothes and holding a feather fan in his hand, saw this scene, he couldn't help but reveal a hint of arrogance and confidence in his face. "Yes, you have also met the requirements for joining the sect." Seeing this, the man nodded to him. At this time, the people behind Fang Gu had already started talking. "It's actually Yi Feng? I didn't expect that as the young master of a family, he would also come to the Profound Heaven Sect's disciple recruitment meeting." "Yes, it seems that many big families are sending their own people to join Profound Heaven sect. First the eldest lady of the Snow clan, and now the eldest young master of the Yi clan. Will there be an ancient aristocratic family in the future? Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 194. When everyone heard this, they touched their chins and showed a trace of speculation on their expressions. When Yifeng heard what everyone was saying to him, the corners of his mouth slightly curved, and he smiled with his head held high. His smile, which was already handsome, showed off his good looks even more. However, when the man standing under the peach blossom tree saw this scene, he touched his forehead helplessly, and urged with a somewhat impatient expression, "Okay, since you have met the requirements for joining the sect, don't wander around here, go first over there in the main hall. There are still people coming to test their qualifications later, so don't waste their time because of this." Hearing this, Yifeng quickly came to his senses, looked at the man with a flattering expression, and then walked towards the main hall in high spirits. Before leaving, he smiled at the people behind him. This smile actually confused thousands of girls and boys among them. Fang Gu looked at this scene, his expression did not change at all, and he walked to the spirit testing stone calmly. "Put your hands up skillfully." Then, I saw a few big characters appearing on the spirit measuring stone. Fang Gu. Ordinary qualifications. When everyone behind him saw this scene, they were almost stunned for a while, and then they laughed wildly. Hearing this, Fang Gu frowned and asked again with some reluctance, "Is there no other way?" The man smiled softly, "That is to use your mortal qualifications to compete with low-grade qualifications in talent training. During the training period, you must not fall behind them in the slightest, and then get top 10 in the outer sect competition." That's it? I don't understand. The qualifications of ordinary people are written there. How can you meet the conditions for joining the sect? Boy, can't you understand human language? Time can temper a person's mind. Fang Gu has changed from a giant dragon to a loach. He has experienced too much in the past few years, and his personality has also changed greatly. He understands the right and wrong of the world, love love hate hate. The man nodded slightly, looked at Fang Gu's leaving figure, raised his eyebrows, and felt a trace of curiosity in his heart. In fact, with his own ability, he can make an exception and let Fang Gu enter the Profound Heaven section. There is no need to participate in any outer sect competition. This is not difficult for Fang Gu, in fact, it is too easy. Even if Fang Gu is compared to high grade, he is not afraid. Yes, yes. Brother, aren't you afraid of being ugly? If I encounter such a scene, I would like to crawl into a crack in the ground. When Fang Gu heard what he heard, he frowned and looked a little unhappy, but in the end he didn't say anything. But the man couldn't stand these words anymore and said angrily, "That's enough. Haven't you finished speaking yet?" The man thought for a while, but before he could reply, the people behind him began to mock and laugh again. But the reason why the man said this was because he wanted to see what Fang Gu's talent was. Also, in Fang Gu, I saw myself from back then. Looking at the man, he raised his hands with respect and asked, "I wonder, Elder, have I met the requirements for joining the sect?" "Thank you so much. Even if I don't join the sect today, when I recover my strength in the future, I will definitely come to you with a thank you gift," Fang Gu said to himself with his eyes burning. The man raised his brows and looked at the conspicuous characters on the spirit testing stone. He sighed helplessly and shook his head. "Brother Fang Gu, ordinary qualifications cannot meet the conditions for joining the section. I, the lowest person in the Profound Heaven sect, have entered the section. All sect conditions must reach the middle grade, and the ordinary grade is really. I couldn't compare to you back then. You may have a broader path than me in the future. As for me, I have nothing to give you, so, just let me help you. It's for me." A help to myself back then. I wonder if you might be able to complete it. Thank you, Elder. Fang Gu sighed softly, leaned over and cupped his hands and said, the mission of joining the sect has been completed, and he has nothing to worry about anymore. Listening to the sarcasm and comments coming from his ears, Fang Gu's expression remained as calm as ever, and he didn't say anything. Fang Gu looked at the scene with a slightly surprised expression, but he felt a sense of gratitude and goodwill toward the man in his heart. After hearing this, Fang Gu's eyes lit up while he was daydreaming. He raised his hands and asked, I don't know, Elder, what method are you talking about? Seeing this, the man nodded slightly, and then in the eyes of everyone's surprise, he pointed to the main hall in the distance and said, in that case, then go and wait at the main hall over there. Then, the man took a look at Fang Gu's current expression, and a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. Ha ha ha, I didn't expect that there are people with ordinary qualifications here. Brother, don't blame me for laughing at you. With ordinary qualifications, how dare you come to participate in the Profound Heaven Sect's Disciple Recruitment Conference? Even if you are brave, it's not like this, right? It's fine if you are alone, but it would be weird if others don't laugh at you. After all, rebuttals with low strength and qualifications are of no use, and it is normal to be ridiculed by others. Of course, there is no need to waste your breath with them. When you reach a higher level, those who ridicule you will naturally be ashamed of themselves. Shameful. The voice was loud and loud, with a hint of anger that resounded in the minds of everyone in the field, making everyone shiver and dare not say any more words. Yeah. After finishing his words, the man pretended to ponder for a while, then looked at Fang Gu and said solemnly, there is indeed a way, but you have to persevere. Seeing this, the man snorted coldly and said nothing more. Originally, he had illusions about these people, but now, humph. What a disappointment to him. I never imagined that you could be so broad-minded at your age. I thought back then, I was like you now, with low qualifications and being humiliated and insulted, but I retorted back. Yeah, don't stop us from testing our qualifications. What else can you do if you have ordinary qualifications? Listen to my brother's advice and go to the small section, maybe they will take you in because you are pitiful. Fang Gu really didn't expect that the man who was impatient with others just now would actually speak for him at this time. Fang Gu smiled heartily and nodded quickly, of course it can be done. Hearing this, the mocking people shed a trace of cold sweat on their faces. They waved their hands quickly, looked panicked, and lowered their heads slightly. They dared not speak any more. The man's eyes shone with cold light. He looked at everyone and scolded, I haven't spoken yet, why are you interrupting? Is it possible that this position is yours? If you still want to say something, come on, I will give up my position. I'll give it to you, can you tell me? Rebirth of Fantasy, Obtain the Sect System. Author, Red General. Chapter 195. Then, the man's plain smile turned serious again. He looked at everyone and knocked with his hand. The banging sound made everyone immediately understand the meaning, and they stepped forward with respectful expressions and began to test their qualifications. And the man also took the boring psychic test again. The recruitment of disciples lasted for about half a month, and batch after batch of disciples arrived at Profound Heaven Sect. After integration, a total of about 130,000 people have joined Profound Heaven Sect. Among them, people with middle-grade qualifications account for about 80%, those with high-grade qualifications account for 19%, there are only 7 supreme-grade qualifications, and only 2 saint-grade qualifications. We have also recruited about 1,000 people with low-grade qualifications. In addition to Shui Yuling, there is also a man named Long Tian who has saint-grade qualifications. Say it. Profound Heaven Sect, the Handyman Disciples Office. A large hall built of mahogany stands here. I saw hundreds of boys and girls standing in the hall, each looking at the leader with respectful expressions. Of course, except for the square bone. At the head of them was a man in single clothes, with a sturdy back and a rough appearance. His eyes were like those of a tiger, staring at everyone, as if what he saw in front of him was not people, but prey after another. Especially the muscles on the big man's arms, with prominent veins, are extremely ferocious, making people think he is someone not to be messed with. And there is a scar half a meter long on the big man's brow. This scar only adds to the ferocity of the big man. Let me introduce myself. My name is Zhou Yi. I am the elder of the miscellaneous disciple division. I won't talk nonsense today. I will only talk about things that will happen in the sect in the future, and what you have to do. First, as soon as I speak, you must immediately come to me and obey my orders. No matter how excessive the orders are, you must not refuse in any way. Secondly, being at Handyman Peak means that your future path can be said to be the end of the road, unless you work hard to practice and participate in the Outer Disciple Conference, in which case you may have some hope of becoming an Outer Disciple. This is the tip I give you, and it is also your only chance to transcend class. Third, the status of the Handyman disciples is low. If you meet an Outer Disciple or an Inner Disciple, you must show a trace of respect on your face, otherwise you will be bullied by them. Don't blame me for not telling you. After everyone listened, they looked at each other, thought about it for a while, and then nodded without any opinions. It's not that they don't have any opinions, it's that they don't dare. After all, there are 1 or 2 strong men from the Wuzong guarding it. Afterwards, Zhou Yi didn't tease Fang Gu, he just told everyone where their residence was, then got up and left. Fang Gu couldn't help but reveal a smile, he finally no longer had to drift in the outside world. As expected, this room is also protected by an isolation formation, so that when I practice, I won't be distracted by outside interference. The space in the building is very spacious. It doesn't feel compact, but makes people feel very comfortable. At least that's what Fang Gu thinks. In Fang Gu's eyes, it was completely made according to his body shape. Fang Gu couldn't help but admired in his heart. Then his eyes glanced at the pile of clothes on the bed. Then he looked around the room. This should be the Qingxian Taoist robe of Profound Heaven sect. This combination made Fang Gu slightly surprised. Although Fang Gu did not lack martial arts skills, Profound Heaven sect's approach made him feel a sense of belonging. Fang Gu had not felt this feeling for a long time. Fang Gu glanced around with a vigilant expression, then walked in and arrived at his residence. There are some clothes and a space ring on the bed. Seeing this scene, Fang Gu glanced at everyone with an unchanging expression, and said nothing, with a calm expression. Then, he ignored everyone's teasing words and walked straight to his residence. By the way, I want to tell you that you are not the least talented among us. The one with the lowest talent is an ordinary person, and he is also among you at this time. His name is Fang Gu. Fang Gu touched the robe with his hand, and then put it on, and found that the feeling inside the robe made him very comfortable, and it didn't look like a robe that someone else used to make money. Looking at Zhou Yi's leaving figure, Fang Gu's eyes turned slightly cold, and there was a hint of murderous intent in his heart, but he seemed to have thought of something again, and the murderous intent gradually disappeared. Everyone looked at each other, then raised the corners of their mouth slightly, and looked at Fang Gu, as if they thought of something interesting. Each space ring contains a book of exercises and thousands of low-grade spirit stones, plus a low-grade spirit weapon. Compared to other sects, the conditions here are simply not too good. Seeing this, Zhou Yi nodded slightly, with a trace of satisfaction on his face. He seemed to have thought of something again, and looked at a man in the crowd. When you open the door, what you see is a simple and shabby bed, a table, and a few chairs. Seeing this scene, Fang Gu raised his eyebrows and smiled, and said, It seems that, as outsiders say, Profound Heaven Sect, regardless of whether it is a handyman disciple or a new disciple, has its own room and training place. It seems that even if the sky is falling, Fangu will not show any change in his expression. And on the side, there is a space ring. There is nothing special and eye-catching around here. There are only buildings made of mahogany one after another. Although they cannot compare with the splendid palace, they will not lose their majesty. After Zhou Yi finished speaking, everyone looked at Fangu, who was standing in the crowd with an indifferent expression. Seeing this, Zhou Yi raised his eyebrows and murmured secretly, "Young man is really calm. It's a pity that your talent is too low, and your upper limit can only be around martial master. You can't reach a higher realm, otherwise, humph." Although he has many opportunities in the outside world, he cannot escape the crisis of life and death and does not have the sense of security within the sect. Say it. Fangu came to a place where the residence of the handyman disciples was written. There was a dark intertwined pattern in the middle of the building, with a big word Xian written on it. Fangu walked forward and found waves of spiritual energy coming from inside. If nothing else, this should be the place for cultivation. Fangu is not afraid of death, but it is impossible for him to die for others. After all, he still has the desire for revenge, which is why he came to Profound Heaven Sect. After a cup of tea. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of Fantasy, Obtain the Sect System. Author, Red General. Chapter 196. Although Fangu would not be able to calm down just because of the noise outside, but, the Profound Heaven Sect alone is completely worthy of Fangu's praise. Just when Fangu was preparing to practice, suddenly at this moment, there was a burst of knocking and shouting outside the door. Can Fangu be in there? When he heard someone calling him, Fangu couldn't help but frown, and felt a sense of vigilance in his heart. He didn't have many friends or relatives in this sect, so who were the people outside this sect? A trace of doubt appeared in Fangu's mind, but after thinking about it, he decided to take a look, and immediately stood up and opened the door. What came into view was a handsome-looking man wearing a Qingxian Taoist robe. Looking at the person in front of him, Fangu raised his hands and asked without changing his expression, "I am Fangu. I wonder what the senior brother has for calling me." The man smiled and did not answer Fangu directly, but asked, "I wonder which family you belong to, is it the Fang family?" When Fangu heard this, he was startled. He couldn't help but take half a step back and said to himself, "How could this person know that I am from the Fang family? Could it be that he came after me?" A trace of doubt emerged in Fangu's mind, but he was still fearless and prepared to face it without any fear. So what about the one who was chasing him? He is no longer the Fangu he was before, not to mention, this is the Profound Heaven Sect, and Fangu doesn't believe they dare to kill him here. That's right, as soon as Fangu opened the door, he felt several strong breaths of martial saints sweeping towards this place. This is not hostility, but Qin Xian is afraid that the new disciples will be bullied by the old disciples, so he gives the new disciples a layer of protection. After all, there are indeed some people who like to bully newcomers by relying on their status as elders. Qin Xian also wanted to solve it, but after thinking about it layer by layer, he found that this could only cure the root cause, but not the root cause, so he came up with this method. "I am indeed from the Fang family. I wonder why the senior brother asked me about this," Fangu replied. Seeing Fangu's confirmation, the man's eyes flashed with a golden light, but he didn't make any movement. He glanced around and then murmured a few words. I saw that the sight of several strong martial saints suddenly disappeared without any trace. Seeing this scene, Fangu's face hardened and he was ready to run away, but the man held him back at this moment. Click. A space crack appeared in front of the two of them, and the man directly pulled Fang Gu and walked inside. The scene changes. Fang Gu followed the man to a hall full of dark atmosphere. The coldness emanating from the hall made Fang Gu's face turn pale, and he felt that the cold air had entered his body. And he can't move his body. He couldn't help but look cold, clenched his fists, and looked at the man in front of him. He was already extremely vigilant. As long as this man dared to show a trace of murderous intent, he would not hesitate to use his back hand. If you want to kill me, then let's die together. When the man saw Fang Gu's expression, he looked a little helpless. How could he want to kill him? He gently patted Fang Gu on the shoulder to tell Fang Gu not to worry. He had no intention of harming him. But Fang Gu will not let down his guard because of this approach. Then, a burst of magic sounds sounded in the hall. Swish, swish, swish. Boom. A burst of sound echoed through the hall. I saw a middle-aged man wearing a black robe and a cold face suddenly appeared in the center of the hall, staring at the two of them with a pair of cold eyes, which made people shudder. Seeing this scene, the man who had been smiling just now suddenly knelt down and said with a respectful expression, "Inner disciple Huang Jianyun pays homage to the palace master. May the palace master be safe." The man in black robe nodded slightly, and then raised his eyes to look at Fang Gu. Feeling the attention of his eyes, Fang Gu was as if a Mount Tai was pressing down on him, unable to move. But this feeling only lasted for a few breaths and then disappeared. Fang Gu was still a little aggrieved, but he finally endured it. Looking up at the man in black robe, he saw a scene that made him unbelievable. I saw the man in black robe with a cold face looking at me, with a hint of apology and regret suddenly showing on his expression. The corners of his mouth were slightly open, but he didn't know what to say. Seeing this scene, Fang Gu frowned, feeling a little puzzled. After taking a closer look at the man in black robe, he realized that he seemed to have seen the face of the man in black robe somewhere before. I couldn't help but fell into deep thought. I thought about it for a few breaths but still couldn't remember the face of the man in black robe. Despite this, Fang Gu still concluded that he had definitely seen this person. The man in black robe sighed, looked away, and waved to Huang Jianyun on the side, "Please step aside first. I have something to talk to him about." "Yes." Huang Jianyun cupped his hands, and then turned into a stream of light and disappeared from the place. Then I saw the man in black robe who had been unmoved just now, suddenly took off his black robe, revealing his tall figure and his face full of vicissitudes and toughness. Fang Gu looked shocked when he saw this scene. You are the second uncle." The man in black robe showed a charitable smile, nodded, and said, "I didn't expect Xiao Gu, you still remember my second uncle." "Of course I remember. You have to know that besides my parents, you are the only person who brought me up since childhood. How could I forget?" Fang Gu suppressed the excitement in his heart and nodded. Fang Gu himself didn't know why he was excited. It seemed like he was missing him before he recovered his memory. The man in black robe smiled, but his smile was so sad. He sighed and said, "It's a shame for you. You should be the only one in our Fang family who survives." When Fang Gu heard this, his sadness suddenly appeared at this moment, but he still nodded. Seeing this, the man in black robe clenched his fists, and his expression showed a hint of murderous intent. This murderous intent actually made the void begin to shake. It was so powerful that it seemed that he could not bear the power of the murderous intent at all. The man in black robe tried his best to stay calm and said in a deep voice, "The person who is chasing you. Do you know where he is?" Fang Gu shook his head, "I don't know. Ever since I joined Profound Heaven Sect, I rarely feel their aura. Maybe it's because of the sect, they don't dare to offend." The man in black robe nodded solemnly, "That's natural. After all, the powerful martial emperor possessed by Profound Heaven Sect is not something that this group of people can act arrogantly. It's okay if they dare to be so presumptuous in our clan, but if they dare to offend the profound heaven sect regardless of the consequences, then they may have to endure the feeling of soul returning to heaven, falling straight into the nine netherworld, and never being reincarnated forever. Rebirth of Fantasy, Obtain the Sect System. Author, Red General. Chapter 197. The man in black robe knows the horror of profound heaven sect. Once angry, the entire profound heaven continent will be shaken by it. However, Zyogu, I didn't expect you to join the profound heaven sect, the man in black robe said with a smile. After all, the profound heaven sect's entry requirements must be middle grade qualifications or above. Although low grade qualifications are a bit lower, they can only be a handyman. You can enter the sect with ordinary qualifications, so did someone make an exception and recruit you in? The man in black robe didn't mean anything else, just some questions. Fangu didn't mind, nor did he think about it. He nodded and said, yes, the elder made an exception that day and recruited me in, but he also gave me some requirements. If I don't meet them, no, I will still be expelled from the sect in the end. When the man in black robe heard this, he showed a charitable smile, patted Fangu's shoulder gently, and said, don't worry. As long as I'm here, you won't be expelled from the sect, and I won't be expelled from the sect either. We won't let this happen. Hearing this, Fangu was moved. Although he had awakened the memory of his previous life, he was still the same person after all, and there would be no change. After all, Fangu would always remember his second uncle's feelings for him. Then he came back to his senses, nodded heavily, suppressed the emotion in his heart, and immediately expressed his doubts. By the way, uncle, are you also an elder in Profound Heaven sect? The man in black robe smiled softly and shook his head. No, Profound Heaven sect is not suitable for me. I don't work in it. The force I am in now is called Shadow Palace, and in the Shadow Palace, I am in his status is that of the Deputy Master of the Shadow Palace. Oh! Fangu raised his eyebrows, and a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. Somewhat unbelievable. He has naturally heard of the Shadow Palace. After all, the notorious reputation of the Second Palace is well known to the world. However, thinking that in my current status, I might not have access to such things, I felt helpless again. What Fangu didn't expect was that his second uncle actually became the Deputy Master of the Shadow Palace. He exhaled slowly. After all, in the Shadow Palace, he was able to achieve his current strength and the position of Deputy Palace Leader only by fighting with his own hands and willpower. This kind of inhuman pain is hard to bear. If it weren't for my strong willpower, maybe, I would have died there. The man in black robe smiled mysteriously, nodded, and said in a deep voice, Zyogu, let me ask you, do you want to be promoted with your current strength, or do you need your second uncle to help you get promoted? Without the position of Deputy Palace Master, the black-robed man Martial Emperor would not be as powerful as he is today. From Martial Saint to Martial Emperor in a few months. This progress can be said to be rapid. Then he asked, Second uncle, you came to me today for more than just this matter, right? As far as he knew, his second uncle's previous strength should have been around Martial Saint. Now, a few months later, what level has he reached now? There was a hint of golden light in the eyes of the man in black robe. Yu said, not long after, the Profound Heaven sect will begin to compete with the Heavenly Palace for hegemony. Then it will be the time to cross the hierarchy, and that is also the time when Zyogu, you can get the credit, and it is also the only time when you can reach the sky in one step. The man in black robe saw that Fangu didn't say anything. He thought he was surprised by the speed of his own realm improvement. Thinking of this, Fangu also felt a sense of wanting to try. After all, what Fangu lacks now is strength. If there is a chance to improve his realm so quickly, he would also like to try it. Have you ever wondered how you got it? But, I finally thought about it for half a month and still couldn't figure it out. It wasn't until I was watching the sunset that the doubts in my mind were solved. Hearing this, Fang Gu's expression condensed, and there was a hint of shock in his heart. When they were competing for the position of Deputy Palace Master, there were two strong men competing with the man in black robe. The willpower and talent of those two people did not belong to the man in black robe. They even far exceeded him. Even the man in black robe himself, I don't know how I got it from them. Having said this, the man in black robe sighed again. Originally, I was thinking about returning to the Fang clan to explain this matter to your father later, but, it's a pity that the Fang clan, actually the family, was exterminated in this way, and you were the only one left, so, as your second uncle, I will naturally hold you to that position. After all, it is impossible to cut off the fireworks of our clan. When you arrive, when we are in that position, then, oh, the two of us can embrace each other and support each other and become a truly strong man, and our family can be immortalized forever. The surprise in my heart has not disappeared. The man in black robe glanced at him, clasped his hands behind his back, nodded with an unpredictable expression, and said, "Of course there is a connection. The master behind the Shadow Palace and the Soul Palace is Profound Heaven Section. The relationship between them is not known to the world. The orders of the second palace are all with the intention of the master behind the scenes." But Fang Gu still had some doubts in his mind. As far as he knew, the second uncle himself did not have top-notch physique or extremely high talent, so how could he reach Martial Emperor in a few months? Fang Gu didn't speak, his brows were deep in thought. There was a hint of pride in his expression. Cruel and ruthless, killing people are all his methods. Perhaps my willpower is stronger than theirs. But then he thought about his second uncle's status as the deputy master of the Shadow Palace, and he felt relieved. He didn't know what kind of pain he would have to endure, but he knew that if he wanted to gain strength, the price he had to pay was essential. Fang Gu heard what the man in black robe said and nodded. He patted Fang Gu on the shoulder and said, "You don't need to be surprised. Although my second uncle's strength has improved very quickly, but, it also comes at a cost, and it is not easy. During the period when I improved my strength, what I encountered can be said that it is a visit to the Lord of Hell." Fang Gu's eyes flashed and he didn't think too much. This news was too surprising for him. He asked again, "Then, second uncle, what level has your strength reached now?" Because the resources enjoyed by the Deputy Palace Master are so abundant, when he took this position, the men in black robes were surprised by the resources he got. It can almost be said that any resources you want will be given to you. Send it to you, and give it to you without hesitation, in an endless stream. Second uncle, what do you mean? However, he still had some doubts. As far as he knew, the Shadow Palace didn't seem to have anything to do with the Profound Heaven Sect, right? He raised his head and asked with a puzzled expression, "Second uncle, does the Shadow Palace have anything to do with the Profound Heaven Sect?" The man in black robe still has a doubt. The man in black robe glanced at him and did not choose to hide anything. He said truthfully, "Second uncle's strength has reached the early stage of the low-level Martial Emperor." Hearing this, Fang Gu frowned. Rebirth of Fantasy, Obtain the Sect System. Author, Red General. Chapter 198. As a person who has lived for such a long time, he naturally understands the meaning, but because he has recovered his memory, it is difficult to say it directly, so he has to pretend to think about it, otherwise his identity after recovering his memory may be affected by it and exposed. Although Fang Gu also trusted his second uncle, he still didn't want to reveal the events of his previous life. After all, even if he revealed it to his second uncle, he would have to explain a lot later. Fang Gu himself was also a troublesome person, so he planned not to tell it. When the time came, he would naturally tell his second uncle. Clear. Thinking of this, Fang Gu pretended to think for a while, then looked up at the man in black robe and nodded slightly. With Xiao Gu's own strength, naturally he can't reach a higher position, so, I have to trouble my second uncle. Is you? Ha ha ha. The man in black robe laughed, patted Fang Gu's shoulder, and said softly, you and I don't need to be so outspoken. After all, in this world, we are the only two closest to each other, so how can this matter? Can it be called trouble? I am preparing to develop the power of our Fang family in the future. Hearing this, Fang Gu nodded heavily, with so many thoughts in his mind that he had no intention of speaking out anymore. Fang Gu had to think quietly about what he should do next. Seeing this, the man in black robe also knew that what he and Fang Gu said now was enough. We would talk about the future things later, and there was no point in continuing to talk. Immediately, the two of them had no intention of talking anymore. The man in black robe snapped his fingers. Phew! A breeze blew by. Huang Jianyun's figure appeared in the hall again, with a respectful look on his face, and he bowed his hands to the man in black robe. Seeing this scene, the man in black robe nodded, and then told Fang Gu with a solemn expression, his name is Huang Jianyun, and he is the registered disciple of the second uncle. Although his talent is a bit lacking, his willpower is very strong. Now he also relied on his own efforts to become an inner disciple of Profound Heaven section. If Xiaogu encounters any trouble in the future, you can go to him. After the man in black robe finished speaking, Huang Jianyun turned around and looked at Fang Gu with a smile on his face. Seeing this, Fang Gu's eyes lit up and he nodded. This was exactly what he wanted. After all, he had the background of an inner disciple, which would make it easier for him to deal with things in the future. Say it. 7 days go by in a blink of an eye. Suddenly came the martial arts competition for the handyman disciples to advance to outer sect disciples. Boom, boom, boom. In the vast and huge martial arts arena, several drums were heard, deafening and reaching everyone's ears. At the edge of the martial arts arena, blood-red war flags fluttered, dancing like thousands of troops galloping. The next moment, a man wearing yellow clothes and short hair appeared on the field. Fang Gu crossed his arms and watched the scene quietly with his eyes. Seeing this, he raised his eyebrows and murmured, "This person is not stupid." Since he knew how to use the bitter meat trick, he deceived him, but, if that person didn't underestimate this person, maybe the final winner would be maybe off the field. Although the other person was not injured, his face looked a little ugly. As soon as the words fell, the crowd watching instantly started talking and making noise. Although Fang Gu knows how to be patient, it doesn't mean that he has no temper. Fang Gu just doesn't bother to show himself to the world. Before Fang Gu could say anything more, a strong man's voice came out from the field again. There was nothing more than a trace of confusion in his words. Why did Li Ling, who was about to be defeated, suddenly deliver a fatal blow? The man didn't react and was knocked back several meters and fell outside the field. The man's expression as he fell still had a hint of disbelief and reluctance, but his reluctance had no effect. Who told him to look down on him? The winner of this competition is Li Ling. Opposite, an ordinary-looking man with an excited expression joked after seeing this scene. There were constant collisions and fighting sounds. After the words fell, senior brother Li's own spiritual power swirled, and the spiritual power wrapped around his fist, forming a roaring force, and he punched the man hard. Making that kind of expression is just to confuse the man. Otherwise, how could it be possible to win in one blow? I saw two men wearing Qingxian Taoist robes competing with each other. One of them suffered some minor injuries, but he looked at the person opposite with a hint of excitement. The two of them are both handyman disciples, so they naturally know who each other is and are very familiar with each other's personalities. After hearing this, the man named Senior Brother Li's face did not change, and his ugly look gradually dimmed. In the martial arts arena, Thousands of boys and girls were sitting around, watching the battle taking place in the martial arts arena with serious expressions. Immediately afterwards, a deep voice came. Boom. But what they didn't know was that senior brother Li, who was wearing Qingxian Taoist robe, lowered his head with a sinister look on his face. He opened his palms and snorted secretly, "What you see is really what you see, really? Don't you know what it means to retreat in order to advance?" Even the people watching felt so. The words fell. "Today is the time to settle things, but for the sake of profound heaven sect, I will only cripple your arm and spare your life," Fang Gu said calmly with cold eyes. "Ha ha ha, senior brother Li, you are no longer good. You can't even take my attack. Do you think it's time to abdicate and give way to someone more worthy?" Before Qi Xian could say provocative words, Fang Gu's figure instantly appeared behind Qi Xian. Without hesitation, Fang Gu looked cold and directly grabbed Qi Xian's shoulder with one hand. Only a click was heard. His left arm was twisted and severed, Qi Xian's face twisted, and he let out a cry of pain. Naturally, the man saw this scene, and his face couldn't help showing a trace of complacency, as if he felt that he was the winner. "Say it." Hearing his name, Fang Gu's body moved and turned into a shadow and appeared in the field. His deep eyes scanned the surroundings, seeming to be looking for something. The eighth game, Fang Gu vs Qi Xian. But he clenched his fist tightly, and the sharp nails on his fingers had pierced into the palm of his hand, and a trace of blood flowed out. During these 7 days, Qi Xian has been provoking Fang Gu, and Fang Gu has tolerated it one by one, because, what he has been waiting for is today's competition. But Li Ling didn't explain anything because of this. What the man just said was right. His strength was indeed inferior to the man's. The move he just released was forcibly performed by Li Ling using a secret technique. Ah! You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of Fantasy, Obtain the Sect System. Author, Red General. Chapter 199. But, it wasn't over yet. Fang Gu tore his arm out with force again, poof. The blood spurted out like a waterfall, flowing gurglingly. As soon as the scene happened, everyone watching suddenly stood up. Immediately he let out a burst of exclamation. "Who is this? He killed Qi Xian instantly with just one move." "Yes. It was so fast that I didn't even react." Everyone was confused and looked at each other. Although they are also handyman disciples also have their own places, so these people don't know Fang Gu. "I know." Suddenly, a chubby man suddenly stood up and shouted. When everyone saw this, they looked up. Seeing that everyone was looking at him, the man touched his head and felt a little embarrassed, but decided to grit his teeth and continue talking. "His name is Fang Gu. He is also a handyman disciple like me, and his qualifications are ordinary." "What? Ordinary grade?" Everyone was shocked, and quickly walked up to the man, looking at him in disbelief. The man was frightened by their actions. He accidentally sat down on the ground and couldn't help but look embarrassed. When everyone saw this, they did not help him up, but began to think deeply. How long can a person with ordinary qualifications cultivate? From joining the sect to being able to cultivate to the martial artist 9th layer, it is already very good, but, the main thing you know is that Qi Xian's own strength has reached the martial master 8th layer. And my qualification is still middle grade. If he hadn't committed some crimes and been demoted to a handyman, Qi Xian would still be considered a genius even if he wasn't the best among the outer disciples. With ordinary qualifications and a level lower than others, he actually killed Qi Xian instantly. Let me ask, who among those with ordinary qualifications can do it? Mid-air. I saw a beautiful and fragrant woman wearing a glazed flower skirt, with her bare feet in mid-air. A pair of gorgeous eyes, showing surprise when seeing the scene below. This person is none other than Qin Xian's eldest disciple, Shang Guan Xianfeng. Why is she here? It's because Shang Guan Xianfeng is too bored staying in the sect. I also remembered that today was the battle for the handyman disciples to advance to the outer disciples, so, I came up with the idea of watching the handyman disciples fight. I happened upon this scene. The appearance of Shang Guan Xianfeng naturally attracted a lot of attention. I couldn't help but start showing admiration. Even the people in the field who were deep in thought couldn't help but look at the figure in the sky when they heard the bursts of noise. To find such a beautiful woman standing barefoot in mid-air. So beautiful. This person's beauty can probably be compared to that of the Phoenix Fairy. This is not just a comparison, it is far superior. Everyone's expressions could not help but be stunned for a moment. Their eyes were fixed on Shang Guan Xuanfeng's slender jade legs that were disappearing and appearing. They couldn't take their eyes away at all. Strange thoughts began to appear in my mind. Suddenly there was a tremor in the void, bringing everyone back to reality from their reverie. I saw an old man with white beard and hair appearing beside Shang Guan Xianfeng out of thin air. The old man lowered his head, leaned over and cupped his hands, "Fairy Xianfeng." But, in the end, I still didn't choose to embarrass Fang Gu. Fairy Xianfeng who dares to ignore me must find an opportunity to beat him up. Immediately, her figure turned into a purple stream of light and appeared beside Fang Gu out of thin air. After all, when Shang Guan Xianfeng appeared on the scene, he attracted too much attention. If he went up to talk to him, he might attract some stupid people to follow the trend and be jealous and cause trouble for him. This is not what Fang Gu wants. Have witnessed. She just said this because she wanted to get to know the genius Fang Gu. As a result, Fang Gu refused to reply to her, so there was no need for her to keep talking and asking thankless questions. Upon hearing the question, the old man's face turned earth-colored, and a trace of sweat appeared on his forehead. The reason why Fang Gu didn't answer was just because he was afraid of getting into some trouble. It wasn't that he was rude. When he saw that the person who made the noise turned out to be a member of the Tai family, he shrank like a mouse meeting a cat. Shang Guan Xianfeng came back to his senses, stared at the old man with beautiful eyes, and asked, "Mr. Su, let me ask you, this person below instantly killed the middle grade qualification with an ordinary qualification, and it was also an instant kill in the realm. What do you think? Is it possible?" Hearing this, Fang Gu raised his eyebrows slightly, and did not choose to speak out. Instead, he began to think a little, as if he was hesitating whether to answer or not. Shang Guan Xuanfeng's red lips slightly opened and he said, "Junior brother, I saw your fight just now. I wonder if you can answer it? How did you defeat Martial Master 8th layer with the strength of Martial Artist 9th layer? How did he know that this person would stay in the competition among the handyman disciples?" Seeing this, Shang Guan Xianfeng shook his head. Naturally, he saw the old man's expression and did not choose to embarrass him. "But I don't know how to answer." When the man heard this, he looked a little angry. And for such a genius, logically speaking, shouldn't he stay in the inner sect? Why would he appear in a competition among the handyman disciples? Are you blind? You didn't see this square bone and didn't reply to Fairy Xianfeng. If Fairy Xianfeng doesn't leave, are you still here licking him? Well. The old man sighed slightly in his heart. But Shang Guan Xuanfeng's identity forced him to answer. Looking at the beautiful woman who suddenly appeared in front of him, Fang Gu did not show any dazed look like the others. Instead, he frowned and slowly took a few steps back. But Fang Gu's expression remained unchanged as before. Why did Fairy Xianfeng leave again? Damn it, who dares to talk to me like this? I'll apologize to you when I get the chance, Fang Gu said to himself with eyes burning. Seeing this, Shang Guan Xianfeng looked a little embarrassed. The cheerful smile on his face disappeared instantly, and he was a little angry. He felt that the person in front of him was so charming. She just wanted to ask a simple question and had no other intentions. It turned out that it was good that this person didn't even reply. This scene left the crowd watching a little confused. Everyone said secretly in their hearts. Seeing Shang Guan Xianfeng leaving, Fang Gu stopped thinking, but felt a little sorry for Shang Guan Xianfeng in his heart. Well, I couldn't help but sigh secretly. He doesn't want to get involved with a woman. After all, who knows if this woman is a direct disciple of an elder or a lover, etc. Shang Guan Xianfeng didn't notice what Fang Gu was thinking, and a smile appeared on his face. As soon as the smile appeared, everyone showed a trace of obsession. With a cold snort, Shang Guan Xuanfeng's own spiritual power surrounded him. He spread his legs, turned into a purple light and shadow, and disappeared from everyone's sight. But others did not see the meaning, and felt slightly angry. There is a hint of vigilance in his expression. Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 200. Mid-air. Seeing this scene, the old man looked at Fang Gu coldly, but said nothing. He quickly followed Shang Guan Xianfeng, preparing to apologize. Say it. A few hours later, Fang Gu returned to his residence and was about to pack his luggage. He had heard that the treatment of outer disciples was not at the same level as that of handyman disciples. There was no comparison at all. The gap was as wide and vast as a natural chasm. Fang Gu was also curious and wanted to see his residence as soon as possible. Just as Fang Gu was packing his bags, suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Boom, boom, boom. Fang Gu stopped what he was doing, looked outside with a frown, and couldn't help but start to guess who the person outside was. Could it be Huang Jianyuan? Fang Gu had such an idea in his heart. But then he was rejected again. Huang Jianyuan was preparing to retreat and break through the realm. How could he come to him? But who? Fang Gu thought in his mind, hesitated for a moment, then walked forward and opened the door. What comes into view is Zhou Yi, who is wearing single clothes and has a sturdy back and waist. Seeing it was him, Fang Gu raised his eyebrows. He really didn't expect that Zhou Yi would come to him. Seeing Fang Gu open the door, Zhou Yi smiled at him and patted Fang Gu on the shoulder, but he had no intention of speaking. Fang Gu looked at him with some doubts. I saw Zhou Yi sitting on the chair with a golden sword, slowly pouring himself a cup of tea, and then said, Fang Gu, I underestimated you before. I really didn't expect that you could reach the outer sect with an ordinary qualification. I take back everything I said before, and I also apologize to you. Fang Gu glanced at Zhou Yi lightly and said. He could see that with the strength of the square bone martial artist 9th layer, he could surpass the martial master, and even his qualifications were still ordinary. But Zhou Yi never regretted it. After all, he felt that it was a small matter for him to get to know a genius and pay a small price. As long as this person can grow up, the rewards he will gain in the future will be endless. Then he saw the space ring on Zhou Yi's finger glowing with light. The reason why Fang Gu was given the elixir was because Zhou Yi wanted to make friends. The reason why Zhou Yi has so many talents is because his own qualifications are not high, only middle grade. What Zhou Yi said at that time, although he had a hint of murderous intention, did not make him lose his mind. In fact, he had no intention of blaming Zhou Yi, nor did he have any thoughts of revenge. Zhou Yi's actions are actually a bet on whether this person will become the person who stands at the pinnacle of martial Dao's realm in the future. Zhou Yi has also been in Profound Heaven Sect for a long time and has met all kinds of proud people. Fang Gu is one of these proud people. Zhou Yi naturally knew that Fang Gu would never forgive him for simply showing his apology, so he also brought some good things today, and Zhou Yi didn't believe that Fang Gu wouldn't accept it. The next moment, a white porcelain bottle appeared in Zhou Yi's hand. As soon as the porcelain bottle appeared, a trace of the fragrance of elixir wafted out of it. Zhou Yi knew that it was useless to hold it, so he gave it to Fang Gu. Although such elixirs are useless in the eyes of high-level experts, but below martial saint, they are worthy of the title of divine pill. And this kind of elixir is what Fang Gu needs now. Seeing this, Zhou Yi's expression did not change, as if he had already guessed this scene. Seeing this scene, Fang Gu sneered secretly, his face was indifferent, and he had no intention of stepping forward to help Zhou Yi up. As for whether he will lose the bet? He. Of course you will lose when gambling. As long as it has anything to do with gambling, you will definitely lose once. No one has it smooth sailing. On this day, the spirit pill was the thank you gift given to Zhou Yi by these two people. Although there is only 2 levels difference, high grade and low grade are not the same level at all. Fang Gu would not believe this. Although Zhou Yiming's apology was very respectful, Fang Gu did not let down his guard because of this. After all, he understood the principle of hiding a knife in a smile. So Zhou Yi wanted to come and make friends with Fang Gu before he had grown up. Tian's spirit pill was only given to him at the beginning. Later, whenever Fang Gu needed it, Zhou Yi would do his best to give it to him. Knowing that he might not be able to go far in the future, he came up with the idea of making friends with geniuses. Over the years, he has made friends with 8 or 9 geniuses. The 2 most powerful ones have even become the disciples of a certain peak master. Then they saw Zhou Yi, who had been looking arrogant just now, suddenly sat up from his chair after drinking tea, lowered his head to Fang Gu, bent over, with a hint of apology in his expression. Zhou Yi looked stunned. He didn't expect that Fang Gu would recognize Tian's spirit pill. Oh, Fang Gu raised his eyebrows, and a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. I thought it was good to be a low-grade student, but I didn't expect that it was a high-grade student. I accepted your gift, but as for the previous matter, I just pretended to have forgotten it. As expected, Fang Gu's future path will be extremely broad, and his qualifications can be completely ignored. After all, as long as Fang Gu reaches a higher status, he will be eligible to receive pills to improve his qualifications. At that time, to its time he couldn't afford to offend. Fang Gu sniffed with his nose, his expression changed slightly, but he still hid it. Without waiting for Zhou Yi to explain, Fang Gu said calmly, the thing in this porcelain bottle should be the heavenly spirit pill. Seeing that the square bones were lowered, Zhou Yi's fierce face showed a smile, but this smile coupled with his strong muscles made people feel a little inconsistent and looked a little weird. The martial artist's battle is nothing more than relying on his spiritual power and his physical body, but how difficult is it to reach the highest level by relying on his physical body? Therefore, we can only rely on spiritual power, but spiritual power will always be used up, and the emergence of Tian's spirit pill solves this situation. It can be said to be a killer. No hesitation, just grab it. But then he smiled again, nodded and said, Brother Fang Gu has a good eye. Yes, this is the 5th grade elixir, Tian's spirit pill. The concentration of this elixir has reached high grade. Because Fang Gu has seen the broader world, as a saint realm strongman from the upper world, he will never care about such a small person. As long as he is not in trouble, he will not talk about revenge. As the name suggests, the Tian spirit pill is an auxiliary elixir. During your battle, as long as you swallow this elixir, you will have a steady supply of spiritual power, and you will not be depleted of spiritual power.